when you undertake strategic planning, the first step will be to identify what is the current position of the business. SWOT. SWOT means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Whoever are the stakeholders involved in the strategic planning process, so they will be using various tools such as a strategy map. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Rate College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. I welcome you all to this session. In this session, we will be discussing on what are the various steps in strategic planning process. So as we all know, in the previous session, I had spoken about what is strategic planning and what is the definition of strategic planning. And in this session, we will be having a discussion on what are the steps in strategic planning. Now, let us see what this holds for us. So, here there are many different ways to approach strategic planning depending on the type of business and the granularity required. Most strategic planning cycles can be summarized in these 5 steps. So, we should understand that the strategic planning, it depends on the type of business and also the type of planning required. So, let us see what are the various steps in strategic planning. The first step is identify. Now, what do we need to identify here? So, it starts with the determination of a business's current strategic position. So, when you undertake strategic planning, the first step will be to identify what is the current position of the business. So, what is the current status of the business and how do you move about? So, in this, identification means you estimate what are the strengths of the organization and what are the weaknesses of the organization. So, this is where the stakeholders use the existing strategic plan, including the mission statement and long-term strategic goals to perform assessments of the business and its environment. So, in this identification process, we will be having an assessment of what is the business and what is the environment, whether the environment is favorable for the business or whether it is not favorable. So, all this we will have to identify, and these assessments can include a needs assessment or a SWOT. So, we all know that SWOT means, that is SWOT. SWOT means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So, when we have an analysis of all these 4 things in the organization, we will be able to correctly judge what is the present organizational position as such. So, we have to have an analysis of SWOT to understand the state of the business and the path ahead. So, we analyze the mission statement of the organization, and based on the mission statement, we set the objectives for the organization, and then we just have to start off with the strategic planning. Now, so the next step in the planning process is prioritize. So, in this, planners set objectives and initiatives that line up with the company's mission and goals and move the business towards achieving its goals. So, next is prioritize. So, we have to just see what are the areas in which the priority has to be given. So, based on the company's mission and vision, the goals will be set for the company, and based on the goals, the activities of the company will be undertaken. So, there may be many potential goals. So, planning prioritizes the most important, relevant and the urgent ones. So, while we are prioritizing the goals, we base them on the basis of most important, then most relevant and the urgent ones. The goals may include a consideration of resource requirements such as budgets and equipment, and they often involve a timeline and business metrics or KPIs for measuring progress. So, the goals include a consideration of resource requirements. So, when you set for goals for the organization, you have to allot resources also what are necessary for carrying out the goals. So, and all such, we will also be having a budget based on the goals, then also the equipments needed, They often involve a timeline. So what is the time frame within which the goals have to be achieved, and the business and metrics or the KPIs, that is the key key performance indicators. Key performance indicators. This is the KPIs. So they will tell us where exactly the business is. So based on the priorities, we carry out the goals of the organization. Then develop. Now what do we have to develop here? So this is the main thrust of the strategic planning, in which stakeholders collaborate to formulate the steps or tactics necessary to attain a stated strategic objective. It may involve creating numerous short-term tactical business plans that fit into the overarching strategy. So what we have to develop here? So we have to develop a series of short-term tactical plans. So based on the goals, we develop series of tactical plans in order to see that we reach the overarching strategy. Now what is the overarching strategy? That is the corporate strategy. So in order to attain the corporate strategy, we make small short-term plans so that we can achieve the corporate strategy. So the stakeholders involved in plan development use various tools such as the strategy map to help visualize and tweak the plan. Developing the plan may involve cost and opportunity trade-offs that reflect business priorities. Developers may reject some initiatives if they don't support the long-term strategy. So whoever are the stakeholders involved in the strategic planning process, so they will be using various tools such as the strategy map. So this, with the help of the strategy map, they will be able to visualize the strategic plan. So when you are developing the plan, so you will have to think about the cost and the opportunity that reflect the business priorities, and so based on this, so they will develop the plan. Then the next step is implement. So once the strategic plan is developed, it's time to put it into motion. So it requires clear communication across the organization to set responsibilities, make investments, adjust policies and processes, and establish measurement and reporting. So once we develop the strategic plans, the next part is implementation. So what do you have to implement here? Whatever plans we are formulated, so it is to be put into action. So it requires clear communication. So before you are implementing the plan, so you need clear communication across the organization. So entire organization is there. So across the organization, you need to have the clear communication, and then what else you have to do? Set responsibilities. So who is responsible for what? That we have to set. Then we also have to make investments regarding the carrying out of the plans. Then adjust policies and processes, establish measurement and reporting. So we have to just everything in quantified terms. So what are the goals to be achieved? What is the time frame within which it has to be achieved? So all this will be there in the implementation process. So it typically includes strategic management with regular strategic reviews to ensure that plans stay on track. So during the implementation itself, so we have to ensure that there is periodical review of the implementation process. So if we don't have a periodical review, then the plans may not go well as per the plans. So we need to have periodic reviews to see that the plans stay on track. Then the next one is update. So what do we update here? A strategic plan is periodically reviewed and revised to adjust priorities and re-evaluate goals as business conditions change and new opportunities emerge. So we have to periodically review the plans, and then we also have to adjust the priorities of the organization and reevaluate the goals of the organization. So as and when there are changes in the environment and as and when the opportunities come in front of the organization. The quick reviews of metrics can happen quarterly and the adjustment to strategic plan can occur annually. The stakeholders may use balanced scorecards and other tools to assess performance against goals. Now, we need to have a quick review of the plans which are put into action. So, how far it is going well, so that we need to have a review, and then we have to see that the review is done quarterly, but then the plans will be put into action. The adjustments can be done annually, and then the stakeholders may use the balance scorecards. Now, what is this balance scorecards? It will help us to know how far the plans are into action and other tools to assess performance against goals. So, all this we will be having an update in this process. Then, who does the strategic planning in a business? So, we have studied about what is strategic planning. We have also studied about the processes as steps in strategic planning. Now, let us see who does the strategic planning in a business. So, our committee typically leads the strategic planning process. Planning experts recommend the committee include representatives from all areas within the enterprise and work in an open and transparent way where information is documented from start to finish. Now, who does the strategic planning? So, it will be a committee who will be doing the strategic planning, and the planning experts recommend that the committee includes representatives from all areas of the business. So, there will be various departments in the company. So, we need representation from the various departments so that they will work in the open and transparent information is documented. So, whatever their planning is done, so everything, all the information will be documented from the start to the finish, so that they will have an idea that how they arrived at this particular plan. Then, the committee researches and gathers information needed to understand the organization's current status and factors that will affect it in the future. So, the planning committee that is engaged in strategic planning, so it will gather the necessary information which is needed for the business. So, to understand what is the organization's current status and factors that will affect it in the future, the committee should solicit input and feedback to validate or challenge its assessment of the information. So, it should seek feedback from the various departments as such to see that, to validate, that is whatever information each department is giving, they should be proper proof about that information, and also if there is anything wrong in that information, they have to challenge its assessment of the information. So, how they can prove it is wrong? So, all that they have to prove in case there is any wrong information given to this committee. Then, next, it can opt to use one of the many methodologies or strategic frameworks that has been developed to guide leaders through this process. So, when they gather all the information from all the departments of the organization, then they have to make use of any of the methodologies they can make use of, and then they can arrive at the plan. So, the methodologies take the committee through a series of steps that include an analysis or assessment, strategy formulation, articulation, communication of actions need to move the organization towards its strategic vision. So, when we mean methodology, it includes an analysis or assessment of strategy formulation. So, what is the analysis and what is the assessment of strategy formulation? The articulation and communication. So, all these are necessary. So, when you have this strategic planning, and we have to see that what are those actions which lead the organization towards this strategic vision. Then it creates benchmarks that will enable the organization to determine how well it is performing against its goals as it is implementing the strategic plan. So, it will create various benchmarks so that the company knows exactly where it is moving. Once it reaches the benchmark, then it knows that it is in the right way, or the plans are being implemented as per the earlier decision. And the planning process should also identify which executives are accountable for ensuring that benchmarking activities take place at planned times and specific objectives are met. So, they have also to ensure that the planning process should identify, so what are those benchmarks, and what is the time frame within which the benchmarks have to be attained, and also the specific objectives which are to be met at that time. Then, there are no uniform. How often should strategic planning be done? So, there are no uniform requirements to dictate the frequency of the strategic planning cycle. So, however, there are common approaches. So, first one is the quarterly reviews. So, once a quarter is usually a convenient time to revisit assumptions made in the planning process and gauge the progress by checking metrics against the plan. So, quarterly review is the one of the most common ways of having a review of the strategic plan. So, once in 3 months, you just have a review of the work which is actually done along with the strategic plan. So, once you compare both, you will be able to know whether you are in the right position or whether the organization is heading in the right direction. Then, annual reviews. The second approach is the annual reviews. A yearly review lets business leaders assess metrics for the previous 4 quarters and make informed adjustments to the plan. So, in the annual review, we will be having a review of the last year's 3 quarters. That is, for every quarterly review, after every quarterly review, we have an annual review. So, in the annual review, we will be having again a review of the 3 quarters in the previous year. So, the timetables are always subjected to change. Timing should be flexible and tailored to the needs of a company. So, timetables are always subject to change. So, based on the timings should be flexible and tailored to the needs of the company. For example, a startup in a dynamic industry may revisit its strategic plan monthly. So, it depends on the type of organization in which you are working. So, if it is a startup company, a new budding company, then only they will have a review every month about how their progress is moving. But if it is a well-established company, you don't need such close reviews any longer. So, a mature business in a well-established industry may opt to revisit the plan less frequently and reviewing the cause-effect relationship among the elements of a business strategy. So, if it is a matured and if it is a well-established company, you don't need to have so many reviews in the company. So, if you have to have a review, so it all depends on the stage in which the company is. If it is a new company, then you need frequent reviews, but if it's a well-established company, you don't need so many reviews. So, with this, we come to the end of this session. Hope you have all understood it. Thank you.